Thanks for listening to the Pop Culture Cosmos and the PCC Multiverse. Check out more great podcasts today on one of these awesome affiliate networks.
You're listening to a Weeby Geeks Network podcast.
You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
The Tangibound Network. Check it out. TangiboundNetwork.com. Listen to this show, the latest episode, every time.
A proud member of the Gonna Geek Network. The opinions expressed are those of each individual. Check out all the other geeky podcasts over at GonnaGeekNetwork.com and get ready, because geekiness begins in 3, 2, 1.
On this week's episode, Sonic hits a speed record at the box office. Have we gone earbud crazy? And what are we looking forward to in streaming this month? All this and more as we once again delve into the Pop Culture Cosmos.
Welcome to the Pop Culture Cosmos.
And we're back with another episode of the Pop Culture Cosmos. This is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source, and also Inside Sports Fantasy Football and the Lakers Fast Break podcast. Thank you so much for listening to all of our great programs. And please, if you can out there, please make sure you give us that 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to our shows. Subscribe, or if you really like our show, tell a friend about our show, because if they like pop culture as much as you do, I'm sure they'll want to hear the latest from all of us here at the Pop Culture Cosmos. Well, it wouldn't be a Pop Culture Cosmos without my good friend. He's our own AirPod of Pop Culture Cosmos. You got to check out what he's doing today at popculturecosmos.com, popculturecosmos.wordpress.com, his great podcast, Topicocalypse, and his awesome book, Congratulations, You Suck. It is my good friend. It is Josh Peterson. What's up, man?
I'm just reading about how Cats is now the Guinness Book of World Records' largest box office flop.
See, that's the thing. When you read all these articles about what is the biggest flop, it's all relative to inflation and all that. So I see where one is supposedly the biggest flop, and then you hear about another, the biggest flop, then you hear about another, the biggest flop. So it's all relative to inflation. So I know there's been quite a bit of flops out there, and the Cats is something that is obviously going to lose a lot of money. But how much money is it projected to lose when all is said and done?
So it's heading for a $100 million box office loss.
See, that's a pretty heavy loss. And again, it's still relative to whatever, the time period and far as the amount of dollars is. Because first of all, there's been bombs galore. I'll say Heaven's Gate, for instance. That one came out way, way long ago from Michael Cimino. And also there was just a whole bunch of backlash on that film. And that one cost a whole bunch of money at the relative time. And if you translate it in today's dollars, could have lost, I think, around that same amount. So, yeah, it just all depends on how you look at it. I know you talked about John Carter before and several other movies that we've gone over in the past, as far as Birds of Prey may not even make its money back. And that's something that does have some relative good word of mouth. I mean, there's people out there that think very highly of it. And unfortunately, it's not going to meet any type of numbers that Warner Brothers was aiming at. I think that movie will at least break even, simply because of the fact it didn't cost as much as the normal superhero movie these days, the 150, 200 million type deals. That I don't think it actually costs anywhere near that amount. So I think that is its saving grace going forward.
Right. I mean, you had mentioned movies like John Carter, right? So John Carter is a very interesting case study, because it is a movie that, it lost a lot of money, but in the end, it's like, even right now, it's the cost is starting to balance out. So it's one of those things where it had a good word of mouth. People were entertained by it. It's one of, Netflix's more viewed films, but it did not perform well. And whereas Cats is like, this is the first thing it seems like the internet has ever agreed on in my lifetime, that Cats is just a bad movie.
Yeah, that is universally loathed, I will say that. But then, again, there's also other movies like, for its time, The Adventures of Pluto Nash with Eddie Murphy. That one was a dismal performing movie that was also very high cost. I know there was the Keanu Reeves movie. Was it 47 Ronin or was that the 13th Warrior? I think it was 47 Ronin.
47 Ronin, yeah.
Yeah, that one was a big time money loser. So, I mean, you have to actually take all these movies from the past that lost a substantial amount for its time and actually look into it exactly how much is it relative to today. So that's kind of hard to figure out because, again, you're talking about a lot of money that is expected to lose when it comes to Cats. I mean, Blade Runner 2049, if you look on Wikipedia and you say maybe, that could be on the list too, since it came out on video and digital, it's something that has probably gained its money back and probably earned a profit because of the fact that it has been one of the best-selling non-Disney, non-Marvel movies over the past 3 years since it came out on video. I have a sneaky suspicion that it's probably turned a little bit of a profit when all is said and done, but in the movie theaters, since it only earned about $260 million and it was like really costly to make, so at the time it came out in the theaters, it may have turned a loss upwards of maybe 50, 70, 80 million dollars. So if you go on Wikipedia or you go on all these other sites, Box Office Mojo, the numbers, or any of these other sites, it's all a relative term. And I know there's all these articles all over that love to pop up every now and then say, hey, this is the biggest money loser of all time. You check out the list there and see what they think of exactly which ones are the biggest bombs of all time. So to me, it's all relative to what is the perception. Like I said, it's with Cats, I think there's a universally panned movie. So I don't see any love for that film going forward. And it's just like the same kind of debate you would have for what is the best movie ever.
I mean, that's a very subjective thing,
and in a way this is too, even if you look at the numbers.
I suppose. I mean, I don't, you know more about the box office stuff than I do, but I feel like it's, in this era where it is really hard to, and I get, you're true. There's a lot of factors going into that. And especially,
the Lone Ranger cost more and it lost more money.
Yeah. I actually didn't think that was a bad movie though. I just think that it didn't find its audience.
And again, like I said, it's to me, it's a somewhat relative thing, even though the numbers are supposed to be in black and white. You'd have to put in a perspective of if you took said movie from 2005, whatever it was, that was the biggest money loser there, and you put it in the context and frame of whatever it is in 2020, then you could get a better idea as far as how much this movie would have lost had it been released in 2020. And then you can really gather to see what is the biggest bomb, rather than just saying, hey, Cats is the biggest bomb, because I don't think they took all the quantifiers into it, because I think there was a lot of other films over the course of time outside of Cats that may have lost just as much money as Cats. So I don't know. That's neither here nor there. But it's a question that may be left unanswered with a 100% validated true answer. But still, Cats is a stinker any which way you say it. Well, we got a great show coming up for you. We're going to be speaking about movies that are a success when we're talking about Sonic, and we'll talk about that here in a sec. But we're also going to be talking about some of the movies that we would like to see as a video game movie adaptation based on the success of what happened this weekend with Sonic the Hedgehog, plus also with the craze that is going on with Apple's AirPods. And I'm like, gosh, they're just... people are just getting so excited to get themselves some AirPods, especially for all those Apple owners out there that really love to go ahead and get this as an accessory. Like you, Josh, are there any other great alternatives? We're going to talk about some alternatives that I've reviewed in the recent past and see if they match up with what everybody's listening to. In fact, you could be listening to us with your AirPods. And then also we're going to be talking briefly about Stranger Things Season 4, because the first trailer just dropped. And also what we're watching right now when it comes to streaming and what we're looking forward to as well. But first, my friend, it is Sonic the Hedgehog at the box office. It is a monstrous hit right now for the video game industry, because Sonic the Hedgehog debuted to what's looking like over the 4-day weekend, close to $70 million domestically and well over $100 million worldwide, which is going to end up being the biggest start ever for a video game movie adaptation, which Sonic the Hedgehog, it's getting good word of mouth. People are talking about it. Cinema score is an A, So that's a great sign for the movie going forward. That could create some great legs for it and basically let it have a long life at the box office. But this is a big hit. No mistake about it. It hasn't even debuted in China yet and probably won't for some time due to the issues and obviously concerns that they have right now health-wise with the coronavirus and all that. So I ask you, my friend, Sonic the Hedgehog, huge opening for a video game movie adaptation, the biggest of all time. What does it say when so many people are checking out a really fast blue hedgehog?
That it's a good movie, that it reached the audiences it meant to. And this is where it's at right here, right? Because this is a family film. This is obviously something that has touched a lot of generations, right? My generation, your generation. I mean, I guess you could even go back to say like my dad's generation, in the later half of it. But it's like, it's one of those things where this is people are who have families now, and whether if your kids played Sonic the Hedgehog, or if they haven't played Sonic the Hedgehog, but this is a way to introduce them to Sonic the Hedgehog. This is great marketing, because this is something, everywhere I want to see this. It doesn't just look good, but it appeals to everything that I love about movies and everything I love about video games. And there's probably a lot of parents out there taking their kids to see this movie, and a lot of kids who grew up playing Sonic just going to watch the movie, whether or not it's a kids movie. So it's got an edge in the fact that, not only did it have that bunch of free marketing from the animation redesigns, but it's got something that it's nostalgic, and I know we always talk about whether or not the nostalgia market is ever going to die, but like in this case, it really helped this movie out. From what I'm reading, you get a lot of the old like 90s Jim Carrey type of humor in this, and then you have a video game character from the 90s. Like it is something that is one of those it's like the Lego movie, right? There's something there for everybody, and I think that's why it's doing so well, especially we're in this dry season of movies where nothing's coming out. It's President's Weekend. You want to get into the movie theater, you want to leave the house for a little bit, go to the movie theater, kick back, watch, have some popcorn, take your kids. Sonic, from what I understand, is a pretty clean movie, and it's something that doesn't happen a lot. And why not go see it? I mean, that's the big factor, right? Why not?
I guess why not? Because when both you and I saw the first trailer, I thought we remarked, especially me, that it looked really dumb and looked really silly. And I still can't shake that, especially the fact that they're, the way it's still being perceived in the second trailers, and even when they redid Sonic on it. But I am going to have to check it out if that's the case, at some point in time down the road. Instead of coming off like a family film, to me, it's just coming off like something a little bit cheesier. But then again, Dora the Explorer, that movie came out last year, had a similar type of vibe with me, and that did okay. So this is doing even better. So I want to ask you, especially coming off that original trailer where everybody was scared to death of that hedgehog that they had created, and they went ahead and they redid everything on it. I know I asked you this on Friday, but can you reiterate why they've had so much success after what they did as opposed to what was done with Cats, and the fact that, everybody was so scared of what was going on with Cats. And we just talked about how poorly Cats have done over the course of its theatrical run.
Cats is something that you would watch with your grandma, and you watch it begrudgingly, right? It was like, it's a musical, and it's terrifying. And it's so terrifying that a young Bruce Wayne ran out of the movie theater when he was a child and his parents got shot. That was a direct result of Cats. So, no, I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. That was a Batman joke. Anyways, no, it's just Cats. It's something that was not something people wanted, right? Sonic the Hedgehog is a beloved property that a lot of people grew up with and have a lot of great memories of. I think that's why Sonic was given so much grace as opposed to Cats, because people, and this is something that's really cool too, is the fact that, look at Sonic, right? It's one of those things everyone was like, again, we talked about this when the trailer first premiered, right? This is a movie, it looks silly and dumb and things like that, but I don't think it's made for us. I think it was made to bring Sonic to a generation of kids who didn't have the luxury of growing up with the Sega Genesis, didn't get to play those 2D platformers, that this is not something that was made for us, but it's something that they knew we would go see, and they knew that we would take our kids to go see it, and they knew that it would be something that and we're all at the, or me, I'm at the age now where like I don't get around to go see movies by myself anymore. So why not bring the family? So it's good fun, and even with the redesigns, people who campaign for that are going to see this movie still, and that's something I've never seen the internet do that before. Good for them. Good for them for standing behind their word and actually going to see something that they had a say in changing. Whereas Cats was just one of those things where nobody wanted it. It was the Cats. The trailer for Cats was like that album that U2 made, right? When they snuck it into your iTunes player and you had to listen to it whether you wanted to or not.
Be careful what you say about U2. I understand that scared a lot of people, but you know what? I love U2. Even though
I'm not saying they're a bad band.
Even though in this century, their music for the most part has not been as captivating as it was in the previous.
Vertigo is actually a really good song.
Yeah, and then there's Beautiful Day, but that was like at the very beginning of the century, whereas the stuff that they've been doing since 2010 it's not clicked with audiences, and I get that. And putting it into everybody's phones, that was not the best of moves. That wasn't a good one.
And this is not me
now,
saying
if you put Pop Culture Cosmos on everybody's phones,
yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Just sneak it in there. Yeah, the analogy is this, though. Like, you gave people something that they didn't want. And with Sonic was something people might not have wanted it, but they're still going to go see it because more people have an attachment to it than Cats, right? As I said before, Cats was something that like you would watch with your grandma or like a film major and you wouldn't want to watch it. It's one of those movies that you like sit there and watch with your girlfriend because you're obligated to watch that and you don't want to upset her. That's what Cats is. But Sonic the Hedgehog is awesome.
Don't tread too lightly.
Luckily, she's not a Cats fan, so I don't have to worry about that.
Fair enough. Okay, I was just wanting to make sure, because once you put that out there, once you say it on that mic, it's out there. It's out there, my friend. So that you're much more danger than I am. It's nice to see that despite what happened with the first trailer and everybody freaking out, especially the teeth and all that with Sonic the Hedgehog, it's nice to see that they recognized that everybody didn't like it quickly, and they made the changes quickly. And it was something that they went ahead and said, you know what, we're going to put it out there that we made the changes already. We listened to everyone out there. And that goes a long way with fans as far as eventually accepting what we're seeing. And you're right. The movie industry right now, people go to the box office, they're hungry for something. And we thought it was going to be Birds of Prey. You weren't as high on it as I was. And it looks like that wasn't going to be the movie event people were coming back to. Bad Boys for Life did exceedingly well. They're now going to be most likely greenlighting a sequel. It looks like there's some good times coming up for Sonic the Hedgehog, and it very well may end up being the largest grossing video game movie of all time, and we're looking forward to it. What are your thoughts out there on Sonic the Hedgehog? Did you enjoy it? Are you still afraid to see it because of what you saw in that first trailer? Share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Also as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Humanica Media, and Game Source on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well.
You're listening to the Pop Culture Cosmos. Don't touch that dial. Wait, do people still use dials?
For the latest news and information, analysis and opinions on the Los Angeles Lakers and the NBA, check out the Lakers Fast Break podcast today on wherever you get your podcasts. Well, my friend, speaking of the success of Sonic, and I'm going to have to go ahead and see it. I mean, if it's obviously doing that well, I'm going to have to go ahead and see what everybody's talking about when it comes to Sonic the Hedgehog at the theaters. And it's getting good word of mouth. It isn't getting the kind of critical praise I think that it would have hoped for. But you know what? Still, when it comes to the fans, they're the ones seeing it, and they're the ones going ahead and deciding with their own dollar that they like this certain video game adaptation. We talked about it on Friday about other video game adaptations that are in the works. Everything from Uncharted to Crossfire, the popular first-person shooter game, especially overseas from Sony. So I want to ask you, my friend, are there any other video game movie adaptations that you would like to see? I was joking with you that I'd like to see an Assassin's Creed movie, but they did that before, and they pretty much ruined that for the rest of time. So,
but there's still a sequel coming out.
You're kidding me.
No, they're still working on it. I keep seeing I keep seeing whispers of it. You know, it was on Fox's slate, now it's Disney's slate, but it's still in the works.
Disney's gonna.
I think so. And I heard also rumors that Netflix was making a Assassin's Creed show.
I also heard there was going to be another Die Hard, but Disney quickly nixed that one. So yeah, I'm sorry, my friend. If I'm sitting down and I'm green lighting either a Die Hard or an Assassin's Creed movie after the Michael Fassbender. See, there was another bomb right there of that Assassin's Creed. So I
merge the universes. That's what Disney does.
There you go. Okay, yeah. Let's go for the Die Hard Assassin's Creed. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Abstergo has been trying to sabotage Bruce McLean's life all this time.
Fair enough. But I want to ask you this, my friend. There are some ideas that we have out there as far as video game movie adaptations that have yet to be done, because you know that's where Hollywood is going to be going next. You know they're going to go ahead and, oh gosh, a video game movie actually made some money. It's broken the curse. The video game curse is finally broken. So where do you go from here? And that's what I want to ask you first, before you go ahead in your list. Do you think the video game curse is finally broken? Because I think it is.
So I've been thinking about this. Yes, I do think the curse is broken, but I also think that studios, especially with Sonic, and you look at James Wan's Mortal Kombat that's coming out, right? Like it sounds like that's going to be a big budget flick that takes itself a little more seriously.
Uncharted with Tom Holland.
Yeah, right.
Because that has Tom Holland in, so there's going to be a nice budget for that.
Yeah, so it's yes, I do think that it's going to break the curse, because if you look at this, like, video game in film is kind of the last, I don't mean to sound cliched, but it's the last frontier, right? We've adapted novels, we've adapted comic books. Like, video games seems to be the next evolution in film, but now we're at this time where there are these giant blockbuster video games, right? You have your Halos and your God of Wars and your Mass Effects and things like that, and like, you have these big worlds, you have these universes that could be franchised, but they're franchised in video games and they do really well. So especially you look at something like Assassin's Creed. Had that been put in the hands of somebody who actually plays the game and is actually passionate about it, it could have been amazing. Look at The Witcher, right? You put The Witcher in the hands of Henry Cavill, who's an avid fan of both the game and the books, and look how good that show came out. So it feels like the next logical step, or the next evolution in blockbuster films, is going to be video games, especially now that people can see they have the potential. So why don't we give them the budget and see what happens? They're already succeeding. There's already a fan base for them. Feels like it would be a dumb move not to. And I have this feeling that now we're going to start seeing more old Sega games become properties, and I'm hopeful for a couple of them.
Don't tell me a Night Trap is on the way.
Let's hope you're not that desperate. That's the bottom of the barrel.
That's the bottom of the barrel, but they already did that through all those 80s exploitation horror movies, so which hence the game came from. So they don't have to go back down that road, thank goodness. When it comes to the video game movie adaptations, I mean, you're right. Hollywood is going to take a look at that, but it's so funny because for all those individuals out there over the course of many years now that have criticized video games as not being art, not being storytelling, not having a narrative, those people are really starting to be proven wrong, because of the fact that the movie industry is taking from the video game industry and creating narrative out of it, or borrowing liberally from those video games and the video games narratives that are already been made and established within those video games themselves. So it's good to see the video game industry finally take note and say, hey, you know what? We are art. We are telling a story, and we are capable of being everything that every other medium can be as well. When you consider music, television, doesn't matter what type of medium. It's an art form all of its own. It's just how you look at it and how you can see it. It can still tell its own narrative.
It's also interactive, right? So it's more immersive than a film would be. I say the same thing with books, right? With books are more immersive because you're getting into the characters' minds and what they're thinking and what they're feeling in these moments. Whereas movies are purely action. You don't have any control over anything that's happening in this movie, and video games you do. So it's kind of a different experience. But I believe with the right filmmakers, you can do anything, right? Like, look at James Wan hopefully does good things with Mortal Kombat, but like there are a lot of, like, if you were to put it in the hands of somebody who has created big universes, Peter Jackson would be one. I would even say Guillermo del Toro could do something amazing with that. Like people who have made worlds, right? People who have built worlds, built creatures within these worlds, built a cast of personalities that are, very diverse. Like if they have the ability, there are filmmakers out there who have the ability. Like I wouldn't just give a big video game franchise to be adapted into a film by somebody who doesn't have any experience in it. Like I look at the Resident Evil movies, right? The first one's really good, but the rest of them, like was it Paul W.S. Anderson was a director of those, right? Yeah, I look at those and like he had never ever played the games. He just kind of liked the idea of it and ran with it. So if they're given to somebody who is good at their job and they put care into the world and actually pick up the controller, play it, check it out. Like if they do that, then I think that these things can be adapted and they can be adapted correctly.
So now that we've established that video games as a medium can be translated well and can also be translated into a profitable venture after so many years and so many attempts by the industry to try and understand how to make a video game movie profitable, they now have. So there's no looking back. So obviously after Detective Pikachu and other similar movies that have garnered at least some type of funds out there, we now have a full success. Well, you can look at Angry Birds. The Angry Birds movie was a success, and the Angry Birds 2 came along because of it. We can now look at a future with Sonic the Hedgehog with a sequel and maybe even a franchise out of it. What other video games do you see that you in your heart think that can be successfully adapted into a movie form and be successful at the box office?
This first one on my list, I don't know if it can be successfully adapted, but I love it, and it's a LucasArts game. So I would like Armed and Dangerous. That's not to be confused with a John Candy film, but it's just the dialogue is fun. Like it's very fast paced, doesn't take itself too seriously. And like, I feel like if that were put in the hands of someone like, Kevin Smith or someone who is capable of making people laugh, I think it could be good. But that is just, that's a side thought. God of War is one I'd really like to see. I don't know who I would put in the director seat for that one, but it has a universe, almost many universes. It's got a rich cast, and it's, if you were to take Kratos and do to him what Cory Barlog did for the latest God of War, it could be a great film, right? You have, take the world of Norse mythology, and obviously you'd have to tell his backstory first, but you build a world out of it. Give it to Peter Jackson or someone who has experience in creating these epic set pieces, and God of War could be pretty great. But also, it would probably succeed very well as a Netflix series also, and that can be the same could be said for a lot of video game properties. Streets of Rage is another one I'd like to see. You look at, and I would love to see Guy Ritchie do something like that, because that kind of feels like his flavor of filmmaking. There's not a lot of mythology there, but it could be interesting enough. It could have this like Fast and the Furious vibe to it, or this Snatch vibe to it, or even a Six Underground vibe to it. I know you said that you were that was an entertaining film. What do you think about Fable as a film property?
Mixed.
Yeah,
I would rather go with Dragon Age personally.
Okay, all right, I can see Dragon Age being one. Like Fable is it's interesting to me because Fable I feel like would be a good series like The Witcher. I don't know if
they wouldn't like it because they'd be kicking chickens
and farting in public and things like that. But yeah, I feel like Fable has a rich enough story, and it could actually be because your protagonist is nameless in that. So if you were to do something like what was that, Bandersnatch, right? The one with
choose your own adventure.
Yeah, you choose your own adventure. Like I feel like Fable could be, just because of the fantasy genre, like it could be great.
You're listening to the Pop Culture Cosmos. Get ready for Kitty Origins Evolutions, the latest documentary from Rob McCallum. Thrusted into heavy metal stardom as teenagers with their debut release, Kitty has thrashed and conquered the heavy metal world for the past 20 years. Kitty has defied industry norms, fought back against women in rock stereotypes, and inspired generations since they appeared. And now, for the first time, they've decided to share their untold story. Generously peppered with archival footage shot by the band, this film gives you an honest and brutal look at what it takes to survive in the music industry. Order the DVD, Blu-ray, and live CD triple pack that features recordings from throughout their 20-year illustrious history from RobMcCallumFilms.com. RobMcCallumFilms.com, your place for awesome stories about awesome people and films worth watching.
You know, my last one here, I'm going to let you talk about one of them, but Mass Effect, right? I know you and I both have an affinity for this game franchise. It's a huge universe. Let me know if you think I'm crazy, but I think that Mass Effect...
I think you're crazy.
well, yeah, I am crazy, but like Mass Effect, I feel like it could be the next Star Wars, you know, if it was done correctly. You know, not to say Star Wars is huge, but Mass Effect is huge. You know, it could be that next big sci-fi thing that we haven't had in a long time. You know, the sci-fi film franchise for a new generation.
I couldn't agree with you more. I've already actually had this somewhat figured out, and I wish we could go to pitch this to Hollywood or a streaming entity, because this would make us $1 zillion. I mean, with all the books that are out there already that came out, ironically, by a writer that just left BioWare, Drew Karpyshkin, because he just left to the startup development studio by ex-BioWare employees. So that's something to take a look at there for a future there. But yeah, I mean, he created some great books that are really just something to follow, that you could start off as prequels to what the original, because the first Mass Effect video game looks to be like, maybe for me, maybe like a second or third film in a whole series of Mass Effect films. I mean, the way the whole Mass Effect universe starts up, where humans find the stuff left behind by the Protheans and left about, you know, how they discover the discovery of the Mass Effect systems itself. You could go ahead and do a film like that. Then you could go ahead and do a film about the First Contact War. That could be its own self-contained film, plus also as well the precursor events that were done by David Anderson and things of that nature. Those which, you know, emanates from the books and the novels that take place just before the events of Mass Effect. You could go ahead into that, as far as even before you go ahead and make a film in regards to Shepard and his events that takes place during the course of the first Mass Effect. I mean, you have a whole series of events you could go ahead and make movies into before and also after. Mass Effect 2, obviously Mass Effect 3 has a, you know, I know an ending that not everybody liked, or the way it's structured, but you could make it into its own ending like that. Mass Effect 2, everybody loves, and you could build other stories within those stories along the way. So yeah, you could actually create, you know, a series of films within the Mass Effect universe that's 6, 7, 8, even 9 films deep, without even ever having to think about going to Mass Effect Andromeda.
Right, exactly. And I would almost say, you know, on top of the movies, like you could do movies, but like some side stories, right? Because there's so many different. You had said side stories, but I feel like that you could do it as like an HBO series, right? You do like a Game of Thrones type thing where there's different episodes being told from different perspectives, and it's just following different stories.
I was thinking maybe Netflix, like again, the prequels, and then you would put the Mass Effect, the one from the video game, you would put that onto a movie box office platform. And then the movies you don't think are going to go ahead and garner as much attention on the big screen, you would put on a streaming service, again, like Netflix, and just be able to tell the stories on a big platform, but also a streaming one as well.
Right. It's a big universe. Like there's a lot of stories to be told, a lot of species that could be introduced that are interesting. You know, your Krogans, your Solarians, Quarians. There is a lot of opportunity there, you know, and it is an opportunity to create a complete universe, a complete story. Because there's a lot of people who I'm sure like sci-fi stuff, but have never played Mass Effect. So this is kind of it would be a big opportunity for them. I'm just curious why no one's ever kind of pulled the trigger on it.
Well, Legendary Films had the rights for many years. I don't know if they still do, but they had the rights to it. They had the opportunity, and like you said, just didn't pull the trigger. maybe it's because of the backlash of Mass Effect 3 and what happened from that and how that didn't exactly pan out or end the way that they wanted to on the trilogy, and how that didn't exactly jive with everybody as far as the way that you were supposed to construct your own ending, and it actually didn't work out the way anyone really wanted it to. And even with the modified ending that BioWare made after, because of all the backlash it received, it still wasn't exactly what everybody wanted to do. But, as a filmmaker, you could take those events, and if you want to make it your final film in the saga, you could go ahead, because it is, spoilers, everyone, the battle takes place, most of it on Earth, and, the Earth is doomed and looks like that, and it's up to you to save or destroy humanity. So you could go ahead as a filmmaker and rewrite that ending to make it something more satisfying to the individuals out there. So you can go ahead and do that. But yeah, Mass Effect is like you said, a treasure chest full of ideas and a universe already there just to be waiting to be mined into. I'll tell you what, my friend, if Mass Effect, whatever Mass Effect that they do next, that BioWare jumps on, if that's a hit, I think people will start to look back into it. I think they'll look back into discovering Mass Effect once again, because people will want to go back into the Mass Effect universe once again.
I hope that the trauma behind Mass Effect Andromeda would be a sign to EA, just showing how important these games are. Like if they're the whole thing with Andromeda, them taking people off of a game that could have been great and putting them onto a game that ended up just being not good. Battlefront. Like, I hope they learn their lesson. I hope they realize the mistakes that they've made and give people the Mass Effect game that they want this time. Because I want to see the series thrive. Because if this next game tanks again, it's done. Mass Effect's done. We're done. We'll never see another Mass Effect game again.
Exactly. I agree with you 100%. And it also should tie into something, if not Shepard, it should tie into Shepard somehow. Maybe Shepard's child or something like that. Just, something that you should go ahead and directly tie into the events of Mass Effect so people can go ahead and continue those fond memories that they have of the Mass Effect series.
Yeah, and the sad thing here is that they have, with Mass Effect Andromeda, they have a bunch of storylines that are still open, and like I wouldn't be opposed to seeing those storylines come to a close, but it would have to be done well. It'd have to be done. And I don't even know if it's worth the risk at this point. They might as well just start it over again.
I mean, I've spoken to you about Mass Effect Protocol. That was a great audio series that episodes were made over many years and it's still not even finished yet. It's been on hiatus for quite some time, so I don't know if it ever finish off what they can go ahead and do because they weren't funded or anything like that. We've talked about a formal RPG for Mass Effect and the Mass Effect universe outside of what you can find on the internet that's made by fans and whatnot. Something formalized like within the realm of a Dungeons and Dragons type scenario and things like that. But we've talked about all that for the Mass Effect universe. But it's because there's so much there. I think it would be great for some entity like a film studio to go ahead and say, you know what, we want to go ahead and invest our resources into this because it could really be something worth looking into. That was a great discussion, my friend, on Mass Effect. I really think that's an idea that I think will go forward, or hopefully will go forward at some point in time as far as a money-making opportunity for the box office and video game adaptations. My list outside of Mass Effect, because, again, that was something that's probably the best option out there amongst video game movie adaptations. I'm probably going to say the BioShock trilogy. You could probably create something into that. I think there's enough there that you could go ahead and showcase that. I put Left 4 Dead just because you could probably throw that out there, and we've already seen that with zombie movies. I mean, it's not that hard to make a zombie movie, and this would fit right in, so it's really not that much of a stretch right there. Wolfenstein New Order, I think that's something that tells a good narrative. I think that's something as far as the fact that, the what-if scenario, if World War II, the outcome of that had changed, seeing it from that standpoint and having B.J. Blazkowicz go ahead and lead a revolution for freedom and liberty, that would have been a good idea behind that. That could have been something that I think a studio can get behind as well, because as you've seen with the rebooted Wolfenstein franchise, for the most part, it's been a success. The most recent game in the Wolfenstein series wasn't as much of a success, but the the Wolfenstein 1 and 2 reboots really have done well for Bethesda, and I think that's something that could be translated well on screen.
In the vein of like the World War II games, what would you think about Resistance?
Now you're talking about Resistance Fall of Man.
Yeah, no, that's the one, Resistance Fall of Man. Like, what do you think about that franchise maybe being given some big screen love?
Yeah, I could see a success for it. The problem is, and it's Sony. Sony has, the rights to it. The thing is, they never followed through on it. They lost faith in it rather quickly after a sequel. They really just didn't finish it out or didn't follow it through. Maybe they'll go ahead and revive it at some point. I think they should, because it is a solid game series. I enjoyed it when I played it. So I think maybe Resistance Fall of Man could be something that could easily be translated, or that concept, into something that could make Sony a ton of money on that. A Red Dead Redemption, I think if you want to go back into the Old West and tell that narrative with John Marston, I know you're not the biggest fan of the games, but I think the story, if you follow the story and just watch the cinematics on YouTube and watch one of those, you would actually be very compelled to go ahead and say, hey, this could translate well into a movie fashion, because the story of John Marston is a very compelling one, and you wouldn't have to go through all those other things that Red Dead Redemption, the original one, or Red Dead Redemption 2, which is still an outstanding game and something that a lot of people like out there. It's a popular series, and it could actually translate well onto the big screen if it were transformed into a modern Western. The last one is kind of a fun one for me, and that's Narc. I don't know if you remember the arcade game, but that would be just something that would be, bat bleeping crazy as far as that's concerned. For the best way I could say it is because that game is, crazy in and of itself. So that would be a lot of fun to go ahead and just see the kind of backlash for a movie version of that game if it ever should come out. Because that's not exactly the most family friendly of video games.
There's a lot of video games out there that are not going to be family friendly. I guess the trick would be figuring out how to adapt it into a more family friendly way.
I don't think some guy in an overcoat trying to throw bombs at you, or some guy trying to get on his knee and throw dirty needles at you, is going to go ahead. And I don't know how you could really transfer that into a family friendly product. I would just go straight R rated.
Yeah. Well, you know what you're getting into. It's kind of like Conker's Bad Fur Day, right? Like the whole concept behind it is like, oh, it's a cute little squirrel, and he's doing this, and this, but they don't realize like what a degenerate this squirrel is.
Exactly. Well, I'll tell you what, everyone, we've got some ideas as far as what we'd like to see coming up in the future, hopefully at some point in time, for movie adaptations for video games based off of the success that Sonic the Hedgehog. What are your thoughts out there on video games you would love to see translated into a movie format, just like upcoming Mortal Kombat, Uncharted, and obviously what we're seeing now with Sonic the Hedgehog? Share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Also as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Humanity Media, and Game Source on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well.
If you need your video game fix, be sure to check out Retro City Games. Located in Town Square on Las Vegas Boulevard or in Henderson, Nevada, Retro City Games has the cure for all your video game vices. Retro games and games for current consoles, Nintendo, Sega, PlayStation, Xbox, and more. Retro City Games has all the staples from any library and some highly collectible offerings too. So pick up a few games today at Retro City Games in Town Square on Las Vegas Boulevard or in Henderson, Nevada. Retro City Games is your video game metropolis.
So I ask you, my friend, your thoughts on earbuds, because I've been reviewing quite a few of them over the course of the past couple years at popculturecosmos.wordpress.com. Ones that have the Bluetooth right in the back, the ones with the collar, other options. But the ones that I've been reviewing recently are earbuds in and of themselves. And that's because the marketplace has exploded due to the success of Apple's AirPods and everybody else trying to go ahead and catch up. Apple's AirPods, which still cost around $130, $150, they're still one of the most popular items that are out there. And everybody's been scrambling, trying to go ahead and have something that matches up. I want to hear your thoughts on earbuds. Everybody out there is wearing them, but I'm not sure if it's for everybody, starting with you.
AirPods are stupid. They look dumb. Okay, so as a teacher, right? Like there's these kids who like you're not supposed to have your AirPods at school, but they bring them anyways, and they think that we're all dumb and we don't notice them. Yeah, so these kids like they bring these to AirPods. The fact that it's a wireless earbud has nothing to do with it. It's more the fact that they have the newest Apple product and they're flexing it. And they think that people can't see that's tucked under their hair or under their hood or whatever it is. But anyways, I see people walking like even just out in public with these things in their ears all the time. You're not even listening to music. You're just wearing it in your ear to say, "Hey, look, I have an AirPod." You look dumb. You look incredibly dumb. Like, why? If you're not listening to music, take them out of your ear. Nobody really cares. I see a guy driving a Ferrari down the street and he revs his engine. Nobody cares. It's just it's so. What is the word I'm looking for? It's such
a fashion statement.
It's a fashion statement. Yes. Yes. And it's obnoxious. It's like somebody walking around counting money. It's dumb. It makes you look very pompous. And that's the, at the end of the day, like why don't you can get an aftermarket pair of wireless earbuds for half the price, right? Like the AirPods are, my brother-in-law got a set for Christmas and I want to say they're almost $300. It's crazy.
There's so many other different brand names out there that are also trying to go ahead and capitalize on the market with high priced, expensive earbuds. I mean, I just recently reviewed, if you want to go ahead and check out on the earphone free wireless earbuds, I gave that a high score and it's under $50. The earbuds provide a great alternative and obviously something that's very lightweight. And the earphone frees that I recently reviewed, those have been great for me. Had a chance to check out the Helm Audio Truly Wireless 5.0 earbuds late last year. And if you want to check out my review, it's there as well. I gave that a 10 out of 10. So that one is truly a remarkable piece of equipment on those earbuds. And that one is priced in and around the price of the AirPods. But again, you don't have to spend that kind of money. Like you said, half the price, even less. The earphones, which I gave a 9 out of 10, and they're under $50. So you can get great value and you just don't have to spend that huge Apple price in doing so. But earbuds to me are something that I wear only when I'm listening to something. But you're right. It has now become just as much of a fashion statement because you talk to people and they have them in their ears and they're not listening to anything.
No, it's a very like they're just being very conceited. Yes. And they're like trying to show it off. Look what I got and look what you don't. And what does it matter? Is it so important to you that you look cool that you're willing to go out and spend $300 on something? Makes no sense to me, and it's just as easy, especially if you're like, well, I'll just get it because I like to answer phone calls without bringing out my phone. What does that say about people?
I don't mind that either. I'll defend that. Because sometimes you're busy doing stuff and whatnot. So I can't say I fault them on that.
Well, but if you're spending $300 just so you don't have to reach into your pocket, like what's the point? Like we have these smartwatches are another example of that. Like now there are smart wristbands so that you don't have to rely on your smartwatch to do things. And it's just we're getting so lazy. It seems like everything is just another step to not have to do the last thing, but it's 3 or 4 times more expensive than the last step for the last thing just to cut out, 2 or 3 movements of our hand or fingers.
It's just like you're talking about with the scooters. Kids on the scooters all the time, they don't want to walk anymore, so they go ahead and have the scooters. So you wonder what kind of exercise are they truly getting when they're just all in scooters all the time.
Exactly. Especially you went from Razor scooters to the ones with the engines on them, and now no one ever leaves their house. So the scooters are kind of going out of business.
Well, that's the word from 2 old men who are obviously saying, get off my lawn when it comes to newfangled technology there. But I will say, if you want to check out my thoughts on the Helm Truly Wireless 5.0 earbuds, or also as well the earphone free Bluetooth wireless earbuds, go ahead and check out my thoughts on those and many other Bluetooth wireless headsets available now at popculturecosmos.wordpress.com. And I want to hear your thoughts out there. How are you listening to our show? Are you listening to it on a headset, earbuds, out in the car? We'd love to hear your thoughts on exactly how you listen to our show and other shows, podcasts, music. Do you like earbuds? We want to know if you are part of the earbud craze because we know everyone out there knows somebody, sees somebody, or is aware of earbuds. So we know the earbuds craze is hot. So let us know. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Before we head on out, my friend, I want to ask you this. Did you get a chance to check out the Stranger Things Season 4 trailer?
I did. It was a very short trailer, very brief. Here's my thoughts on it. Yes, it looked cool. What are the Russians doing? The Russians are the bad guy, right? Because in 2020, the Russians are always the bad guy. You know, we don't really know what the Russians are up to, but it's just fun to make them bad guys. Our rival did the same thing. And it makes sense because Stranger Things in the Cold War where the Russians were the bad guys, you know, and the Americans on FX did the same thing. Let me ask you, do you feel like the theme of villainizing Russia is kind of played out a little bit? Like maybe there needs to be new I'm not getting political. I'm talking about like in movies and media.
But then again, you just go to drug dealers. Then that got played out.
Or terrorists. Yeah, okay. All right. I get it.
How many bad guys that are identifiable to a large mass audience do you really have?
Yeah.
In contemporary type thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess it works with the setting and the era. All right. No, I get it. But okay, so yeah, they open it up. The trailer opens up. They're building a railroad, right? And you know it's in Russia immediately because it's cold and everyone's kind of got their Soviet Union garb on. They're working on this railroad, and then you see this one prisoner in particular, and you're like, why are they focusing on him? He's got an interesting body build, like we've seen him before. Camera pans around. It's Hopper, and they don't give you any date. They're basically just letting you know that he's alive. What we find out, yes, they are filming Stranger Things 4. It is happening. We don't know anything about when it's going to be released, but I want to ask you this. Did you get a chance to watch it?
I did, actually. I thought it was something very interesting that they would go ahead and show their cards real quickly that Hopper is alive.
Yep. That's what I was going to
say. That's the problem you and I have. How many trailers do we see these days, initial trailers for big projects, that they already take away the secrets already before they need to?
Well, people can't wait. Yeah, I feel like they made a brave decision in the end of that show by potentially killing off Hopper, and they were afraid to stick to their guns. You know, they wanted to let people know, yes, he's still alive, so you can come back to watch the show. People are going to finish it anyways, right? Because season 4 was supposed to be the last, or is supposed to be the last season of the show. So it feels like they made a choice and then they became too cowardly to stick to it.
So we'll wait and see exactly when Stranger Things Season 4 comes out. But after a great Season 3, which got me hooked into the series, really for the first time, I am looking now forward to the Stranger Things out there that are coming up in Season 4. What do you think about Stranger Things Season 4, the trailer that just came out? Are you excited for the series still as much as you have been in the past? Share us your thoughts. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. We often talk about what's coming up on broadcast television and cable television and all that, but I know streaming is now such an important part of the equation, and we don't talk enough about streaming because it is now dominating the marketplace. But I want to ask you this, my friend, before we head on out. What are some of the things on streaming networks that you're looking forward to or that you're watching right now?
I have 4 shows on my list right now. One, Ragnarok. I think I talked about this briefly before. It is actually a really good show. It's Netflix, 6 episodes, not really a big time commitment. Each episode is about 40 minutes and the last episode is about 36 minutes. So it's not really, you're not sitting there watching like an hour show, but it feels full enough to merit 40 to 45 minutes of your time. It's a different take on Norse mythology that is not Marvel's Thor or Vikings. You know, it feels more contemporary and more relatable. And they put an interesting spin on, climate change and all this stuff. Like it's very clever. So I would definitely recommend watching that one. I'm trying to watch Lock and Key. Have you watched any episodes of that yet on Netflix?
No, but it looks kind of promising. I haven't been able to because there's like you've said before, there's a backlog of stuff that I have to see.
Yeah, so I'm like trying to get through Lock and Key. I've watched episode 1. I'm not really liking it that much. Like I feel like they don't know what they want to be, right? The point behind Lock and Key, this dad dies and they move into the house, his family house, and there's all these doors and all these keys hidden around the house. You find the keys to open the door, and each door allows you to take on this different ability. Like for instance, you can travel from one place to another. You can have your spirit leave your body, like in Doctor Strange. There's one that's like a prison. Like there's all these different keys, all these different doors, and it feels like it should be a horror story. And the set pieces are designed for that, but it's not, and they have a kind of a cool opportunity to create suspense, and they don't really do that. So I don't know. It's just it confuses me because it feels like it's not quite sure what it wants to be. Warrior season 1, I talked about that with you a couple of weeks ago. That was probably one of the better shows I've watched in a while. And I've actually been going back to Hulu and watching Letterkenny. Have you heard of that?
I've heard of it, but have not seen the show.
Okay, it's definitely not family friendly, but it's basically the premise of this show is that it's about farmers, hockey players, Christians, and drug dealers all trying to coexist in one town. And it gives you this premise at the beginning of every episode and said, and here are their problems. And it's pretty funny. The dialogue is really well written. It's really fast. So a lot of people might find it stupid because not really a lot happens, and I guess in the show, and I guess that's kind of the point of it. But I saw Kevin Smith post something, and like if he gets starstruck over meeting the guys from Letterkenny, that they're doing something right. So there's like 7 seasons of it out on Netflix. They're each like 20-minute episodes. Kind of I would say they're worth watching if you're into dialogue based humor. But yeah, what are you watching?
Well, a lot of the stuff that's out there that I'm sampling, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I mean, a lot of people can hear what I go ahead and root for when it comes to the TV updates that Jessica Bogg and I cover whenever she comes on board. But I will say one of the things that I am watching intently is Star Trek Picard, and that's off of CBS All Access. I think that's been a big success so far. They've already earmarked season 2 for it, so it's already getting the kind of numbers that they're looking for. Even though Patrick Stewart is at an age where he's slowed down considerably, and he's not able to give you that kind of command performance that he did in Star Trek The Next Generation, or even in the films that took place, some of which in the early 2000s. I really recommend Star Trek Picard as being a show that I think people should tune into each and every week, because it's getting more and more interesting where the conspiracy begins and where it ends. How intertwined is the Romulans involved in this plot with the androids side of it, the Borg? How is the Borg relating to it? And we got, at the very end, we got a reveal from a character from the past that we are very familiar with within the Star Trek universe. So it's becoming a really great narrative, not only bringing some of those famous characters back, but also introducing new ones. Star Trek Picard is doing something very good for a lot of viewers out there. For me, I'm hooked on it, and I can't wait for the next episode, especially as they retell the events of how Jean-Luc Picard left Starfleet in the first place, as they begin going ahead to tell that entire narrative, which I was looking forward to seeing in the pilot episode. I wasn't sure if they're going to go ahead and tell more into that, and they are. So I'm liking not only what they're telling as far as the past, but they're also what they're going ahead and telling about what's going on in their future in the universe of Star Trek Picard. So I really like it a lot, my friend. It's good for me. And there's also other great stuff. We're both waiting for The Boys season 2, the Lord of the Rings show when that comes out. There's so many other great things. The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, that's always great for Amazon Prime viewers out there. Jack Ryan season 2, if you want to go ahead and check out something for the recent past that a lot of people are talking about. So there's a lot of good things that are out there on many of the different streaming formats that are out there. So you just got to find something you like, but there's a lot of good stuff out there, rest assured, which is the problem because it can get overload really quickly.
Yeah, and that's the big thing with Netflix, right? Like that's what they got to be careful of. There's a whole ton of content out there, and I don't know if it's necessarily made all in house or if it's foreign studios that are that they buy a lot of stuff from. But like there is a lot of good shows on there, but yeah, they have to keep creating things. I'm curious what the standard is for calling something a success, but yeah, they have to keep creating things that are worth your time, worth watching. And that's where the trick comes in here, because anybody with a camera can make a series these days. So it's how do you sort through all of it? Amazon Prime, their stuff still feels a little more special because they only release series every once in a while. Same thing with HBO, and I don't even know what Starz is up to these days. But yeah, it's like you have to be very careful. I'm fearing that this is going to happen with Disney Plus, right? With all these shows coming out, the Mighty Ducks and the Star Wars shows and the Honey, I Shrunk the Audience shows and stuff like that. Like they're just going to be launching things out one after another and becoming what Netflix does. And so these shows, as they come out more frequently, they become less special.
But also the fact that you're going ahead and having to choose so many different streaming formats, it's really going to be tough going forward exactly which ones you're going to focus in on, because the options are going to be many, for at least for the short term. Whether or not for the long term, that's up for debate. But even with Apple, Quibi, Peacock, HBO Max, and so many other different streaming formats either now available or coming up very soon, the choices are going to be plenty, but also the headaches might also not be far behind. So for Josh Peterson, this is Gerald Glassford. It's another beautiful day in paradise right here in the Pop Culture Cosmos. We thank you for listening. And here's hoping you have yourself a great day.
My name is Quoth. I tread paths by moonlight that others fear to speak of during the day. I've talked to gods, loved women, and written songs that make the minstrels weep. You may have heard of me. Join Mandy and her friends as they explore Patrick Rothfuss's best-selling fantasy series, The Kingkiller Chronicle. You can find us at casterquest.com or on the ESO network.
You're listening to a Weeby Geeks Network podcast.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping through Amazon.com or the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Tangent Bound Network. Let your voice be heard. TangentBoundNetwork.com.
Thanks so much for downloading the Pop Culture Cosmos, and stay tuned as more great podcasts are on the way. Thanks again for listening to us here at the Pop Culture Cosmos.